Yeah, we hear a lot about emotional resilience. There's a lot of talk about it, and I think there's a few misunderstandings. Probably the first one is that when we think about resilience, sometimes we think that means being emotionally bulletproof. Sometimes we think when we're resilient, we shouldn't feel vulnerable or weak or afraid, and that's not the case at all. I When I think about resilience, I think about bounce back, our ability to bounce back from the difficulties that we will all face as human beings. The loss of a job, the loss of a loved one, the loss of our health, the stresses and strains that we face in work as part of our life. The kind of, I think, what it means to be a human being means that we're going to be disappointed. We're not going to get what we want. There's no way of avoiding that. But what we can do is build resilience, build our bounce back ability, our ability to bounce back from. Well, I mean, it's interesting. So when we look at the research in the area, it was a wonderful researcher way back in the 60s, a woman called Emily, and I forget her surname, Warren. And she looked at a whole group of kids. There was about 700 kids in Hawaii, and most of them were coming from homes where there was a parent who was alcoholic. There was huge disadvantage, so really difficult situations. And what she noticed was there was about 40% of those kids who went on to be able to live lives, to hold down a job, to form relationships. So she was kind of going, well, what happened? Why can 40% of them do it and 60% of them can't? And what she described as, so she coined the term resilience. So she said, the 40% who managed to come through life, to come through the difficulties, are resilient. And then she helped us actually to kind of think about, well, what are the ingredients of resilience? What are the things that make us resilient? There's two things that really stand out from her work. What she found in the kids who managed to survive adversity, to thrive, actually, they had two things. They had a non-parent adult in their close network. So an adult who wasn't their parent, who was their safety, who was their point of reference, and they were also involved in community. So those two things, a safe adult and involved in community. So very interesting. These are the ingredients. We, my colleagues in UCD, a number of years ago, a big study with a lot of, with thousands of adolescents and young people. And they termed the study One Good Adult. And what they discovered 50 years on from the study I just mentioned was that what helped adolescents and young adults to cope was having one good adult in their lives. And I think as adults, as change makers, as healthcare deliverers and administrators, we need the one good adult. We need, who is your one good adult in work? Who's your buddy there? So the one good adult and that sense of community, of being part of something bigger than ourselves. So when you look at the literature, when you look at the research, and there's about 50 or 60 years of research in the area of resilience now, there are four things that are pointed out, four ingredients to resilience. And number one, resilient people, they prioritize relationships. Number two, they know that things are temporary. And number three, they embrace imperfection. And number four, they invest in something bigger than themselves. So these are really, really important ingredients, and maybe just to have a little look at some of those. It's sometimes said that the most important decision that we'll make in our lives is who we spend our time with. The impact of those close relationships on our lives cannot be underestimated. particularly when we find ourselves in situations that are challenging, that are tricky, that we're trying to bring about change and perhaps meeting resistance. We don't do that without our tribe. And I think probably days like this, when we come together, are really about our finding your tribe, coming back to our tribe. And in that, the huge support, affirmation, encouragement, humour, all those things that happen here, they kind of fill the tank, and we can go back to what we're doing for another little while. So probably the most, if not one of the most important ingredients. The other important ingredient that the research says is that resilient people know that everything is temporary. The good, the bad, and the ugly of life. It's something to do, I think, with understanding impermanence. So that even when we encounter very difficult situations, very challenging situations, knowing that actually this is temporary, it's impermanent, and it will change. A really important ingredient. And the which always surprises me, and I think can surprise other people, resilient people are really good with their own imperfection. So they're good on accepting imperfection. When we are perfectionistic, it really gets in the way of creativity and problem solving and our resilience and capacity to hope. So resilient people embrace imperfection. And I've said before, sometimes we joke about setting the compass in to become a compassionate mess. Really letting ourselves off the hook. So important. And the fourth and final ingredient, I think that comes up in the literature all the time, is that idea of investing in something bigger than ourselves. Resilient people seem to invest in something that's more than me, like our community, a charity, a sporting organisation, a cause, a family member. And something very important psychologically seems to shift when we move the focus, the narrow focus, from me, myself, and I, to something outside of myself. And I think the importance of that can't be stressed enough. So I think to maybe just to reiterate or to say, the bounce back. So what resilience can be learned. So the things that we've talked about, the relationships, the belief in something and contribution bigger to myself, knowing impermanence. These things can be learned. Resilience can be built and learned. We're not born with it or without it. So I think that's really important to say. The embrace of imperfection. So important. These are the things that the research is saying contribute to growing our capacity to bounce back. We can't live a life without experiencing loss, sadness, frustration. All those things are utterly normal. They're not a sign of fault or doing things wrong. In fact, they're a sign of commitment. Nietzsche, a German philosopher, said, that those of us who have a why can endure any how. Those of us who have a why can endure any how. And that brings to mind the importance of a why. Why are we doing what we're doing? And when we're on the front line, delivering care, managing care, trying to bring about change, I think it's so easy to forget our why. Our why is about a real commitment to bringing about better care in the right time, at the right place, in the right way to patients. And holding on to that why, I think will only bolster our resistance, writing it down, remembering, and on days like today, coming back to the why, the power of why. It won't let us down.